All right, YouTube. Let's keep working on this orange thing. All right. So, these babies are kind of unobtainium these days. Could get aftermarket. Maybe they're okay. I don't know. But I was able to find an OEM in very excellent condition on eBay for, let's see, $45. And if you know how much these are new, I think they're actually over $200 now. That's a pretty good deal. And in the condition that it was in, it was taken off using bearing pullers, which, yeah, that works, but it's actually not advisable because it does damage them. It can be significant, but in my case, I got lucky. You can see here there were a couple marks. I've kind of filed them away, but and making sure that there wasn't going to be anything that might contact with any of the surfaces down here. But otherwise, really, really good shape. So this should be fairly straightforward. It came with the pawls and everything. I'll check the torque on those after we have them on. So I guess the first step here is to get a piston stop in. Right now we got it at bottom dead center. So we're gonna go ahead and get this in place. And we will run this up. There we go. And actually, we're going to have to do it the other way. This is a normal conventional thread on flywheel, so we're going to be torquing it that way. There, now we've got it back up to top dead center. And I guess before I do that, I'm going to back it off a little bit and make sure that I've got the slot for the Woodruff key exposed. Careful you don't lose these, they're pretty small. So you'll position that in the slot. It may not go real easily. May end up having to tap it. Don't recall it being quite so tight. But we're going to have to tap it a little bit. There we go. Get that away from the decomp. Just going to make sure I got it well seated on there. I don't want it to be very loose before you get it installed. You want it fairly level and flush here. You don't want it off to a side. All right. Now, this is a pretty simple matter of fitting it over the key. All right. Now we got to find the nut and spring-loaded washer. Which I have with the old Pauls, which now just become some spares for us. By just eyeballing that, it looks like it's about a 13, 14. I'll bet you it's 14, but I'm going to try a 13 on it. Yeah, it's a 14. All right. I'm not going to pull these back with cable ties. That's probably an advisable thing to do. Actually, I'll pause you here, and I've got another idea. We'll be right back. All right, that just took a minute. So, I'm going to grab hold of these. Using a rubber band. Sometimes low tech is the best. If I can get this to work. There we go. All right, grab a torque wrench. .13mm, 14mm socket. Well, these babies are on there good. They need to be. You don't want these flying off. If they fly off, it'll ruin your day. Could kill you. Anyway, you want those on there nice and tight. These two spec are 35 Newton meters. It's exactly the same for the clutch, which we'll be doing next. All right. Got our stopper in. Yeah, you could use a plastic stop for that. I've all the OEM or the manual says to use a metal stop like this. You do have to be careful that you don't over torque and damage the piston. There we go. All right. Let us switch the mode here. Just want to see. Just 35.5, so we'll call that pretty good. All right. Okay, nothing's interfering there. We got the nut all the way down. Okay. Not seeing or hearing any issues. While we're at it and have the piston stop in place, we might as well double check the torque on the pawls. Those are supposed to be at 9, and those look like they're easily, should be a 4mm Allen. Indeed. All right, well, boy, this one thing I don't like about this particular torque wrench is how hard it is to, all right, that was it right there. It's hard to see, it's so darn shiny. All right, 9 Newton meters on the pawls. Yeah, they were already at least that tight. You just never know if they were taken apart. So those pawls are not going to come undone. That would not be a good thing if that were to happen. All right, the flywheel is on. Beauty. Okay, we're going to move over to the clutch now. Got a number of things here. We got the clutch drum. We have the rim sprocket, the needle bearing, and the clutch itself. All right, so remember that righty loosey, lefty tighty on the clutch. It's always reverse threaded. So we're going to be working left on this to tighten it. Nice thing about these old saws, if you're new to this generation of saws, is that they have a hole in the end of the drive shaft here, the crankshaft, and a little hole over here on the side, and that's a really convenient way to grease your needle bearing without having to take anything apart. Of course, some people don't like this version or model of, or I should say style of clutch, an Audi clutch, because some people consider it a pain to put a chain on, but I grew up using these saws and I don't think it's that difficult myself. So I'm just using some white lithium grease here, but you'll be using pretty much any lithium based grease that you want is what you're going to be using. You know, whether you like red tacky or conventional bearing grease, any lithium based grease or bearing grease is what you're going to be using. And but yeah, that's really convenient. A lot of people have little small grease guns, and so after if you use it a lot in a day, every day, otherwise probably once a week, you just give a little shot or two of that. And if you forget, it's not a huge deal. You just don't want to go a long period of time and forget that, because as you may have seen on the 395 rebuild that I'm doing, things had completely dried out, and that'll cause you some problems. So anyway, once you got that bearing on, then you're just going to fit on. In this case, I'm putting a 3/8 7. I really prefer doing that than an 8 tooth, and I like 3/8 chain. It's probably the most standard or commonly used around here. But this will just slip right on, and the teeth on that drum will just fit right in to the worm gear. And then make sure you don't put this on reverse, otherwise you won't have any way of tightening it. I've heard of people doing that. I don't know that that's a common thing, though. It's pretty obvious which way to put it on. And then again, reverse thread. So just be careful. Try and get it lined up before you start spinning it. I mean, it is possible to strip the threads, so that'd be the last thing you'd want to do on your crank. All right, let me get this. I believe, if memory serves, that it's same size as a standard scrunch, which would be a 19 millimeter. Okay, lefty tighty, don't forget it. Suppose I better. I'm still debating whether I like these electric or electronic torque wrenches. It served me well, but I have no way of knowing how accurate they are. Some people swear by them, others say they're not accurate, but we're going to use it. What did we get there? 35.7. 36. All right, we don't need to go any more than that. That's the spec. And the reason why we don't have to worry about it, basically what you're doing is, in case you start this up before you put your clutch cover and bar and everything on, this is going to spin, right? And it tightens up on itself. But if you don't have it tightened to spec and you don't have the clutch cover on, then as this spins, because it's spinning forward, and that's to the right, reverse thread. This will come flying off. Could go across the room and then hit the ground and go spinning off on you. You might even damage it in the process. Could even be dangerous for you. But we are good to go now. And I think we might as well move on to the ignition. There's a little bit of a job involved in getting that set up. All right, I shouldn't need my stop anymore. And actually, before I do that, just because I've heard of people being concerned about damaging the piston when you use the stop, and I'm just looking at it, and everything's fine. There's just usually a little tiny mark that the piston stop will create. I just check them to make sure that there isn't anything more than that. But if you already have things tight and you're not going past spec, you're not going to have to worry about a metal piston stop damaging your piston. All right. So now it's time for the ignition. Let's see here how we want to do this for you guys. See if I can put my block of wood here to good use again. Yeah, that might work well. Yeah, I think you can see what's going on there. All right, lots of little bits and doodads to finish this saw up yet. So we have our, I guess they call it an air conductor or a shroud. I call it a shroud. They hadn't yet perfected the air injection system when these were designed, so I just call it more of a shroud, but it does help, I guess, the airflow a little bit. What else we got? Now these had a 2-coil ignition system on them. I think technically this is considered the igniter, and this is really more the magneto. This fits over back here. This is actually the spark plug wire right there. All right, we got our ignition wires. I guess I'm not an expert on ignition, but I'm guessing the red means positive and the blue is you would have to have negative. I know that the blue wire goes to the kill switch, so it would make sense to me that that would be grounded and that's the negative lead. Let's see here. Boy, I don't have much space. Okay, we have a couple washers that go with the igniter. So we'll set that over there for the igniter. And then we have the 2 bolts for the igniter. We also need a couple bolts for the magneto, and I'm not seeing those. We got the spark plug cap and the little tube of boot. All right, I'm not going to proceed until I know I've got the bolts I need. So what I'm going to do is just shut you off here for a second till I track those down. All right, so got the bolts, and they are exactly the same as the AV mounting screws, just so you know. Just measured this on my 281. This is just an insulator. The wire kind of rides up against the cylinder. Probably help prevent it from cutting through the rubber, vibrating through, and then also just insulating it in case things get a little warm. I'll have to put the spark plug cap on this. I'll do that off camera. You don't need to see me fiddling with that. All right, let's get the spark plug cap and the igniter put away for now. Okay. So I'm going to move the flywheel so that it's not, the magnet on the flywheel isn't coming up against the ignition module here. This is going to mount in here like so. I don't believe a really tight Loctite is necessary. So I'm just going to put a drop of blue on oh, doggone it. I hate it when that happens. Just clean that up a bit. Don't get it on too much other stuff. Okay. Those are going to be 4mm Allen bolts. Okay, I'm not going to get them tight all the way just yet. Grab my gauge here. This is going to gap the ignition. 0.3 millimeters. Hold back the module till the magnet gets in place and then release it. against the gapper. Sometimes I'm not too keen about it being, you know, perfectly tight on there. You know, there's a little bit of it can pivot. That's a little too loose. Now I'm not going to torque it to spec yet. I'm just testing it so I have it good on one side, but it's a little too loose on the other. So I'm going to hold it with my finger and loosen these just a squeak so that it can pivot. Hold it in place. Basically going to try and eyeball it to get it. So if you do have some issues with ignition, it could be because your gap is incorrect. You don't want it to be too far. You don't want it to be too close. If it's too close, obviously, you could have issue with the flywheel. Also scraping it. And I just think that was a little bit too... Just seems like the gap is pretty wide on this. Didn't look like the magnets were really worn at all. So I'm just trying to even out both sides there of the flywheel. Now I'm moving it, just looking at the fins and the magneto, just making sure nothing's going to scrape. So we're going to go with that. I think we're probably dealing with just a smidgen over 0.3 millimeters, but the proof will be in the pudding when we actually run it and see if we have some issues with firing. And I believe we're looking at 7 Newton meters for those. Back this off a couple. There's 7. We were almost there to begin with, except for that one. All right. She's not gonna come loose on us now. All right, let's get out our shroud. It's going to fit right like that. Get our blue lead. That's going to run right here all the way up and over. So the blue ignition wire is going to fit on the top contact, and the positive or red ignition wire, which will end up running all the way over to the igniter, so it's a smidgen longer. We have an issue though. Yep, got it backwards. Got it backwards. Now you can tell just by the size of the contacts here, so really no way you can mess this up. Smaller contact on the red ignition wire. I'm going to put that underneath the blue. Press it on. Okay. You can see how the blue ignition wire is going to fit. The positive will sit down like that. That's one reason why there's a little bit extra protection there for it. So it's important if you ever have these break on you or this crack that you replace it, because if these come loose, get caught in that, you'll have some problems, obviously. All right, so now see if I can bring this a little closer to you guys. Trick is we need to get these wires into that ignition grommet, and to do so will be a little bit easier if I remove that grommet. I don't know if this is correct, but that's how I'm going to put it in. Not really liking that. It just seems like that was too much pressure on that wire. But I'm not thinking that there's much we can do about that. It's going to be bent either way, so I'm pretty sure that's how it's supposed to go. Of course, I could crack open my 281 just to verify. All right, so might be a little easier doing this one first. Less risk of damaging the red lead. All right, press that through. Red lead has to come up and over. The blue lead needs to stay down low and go underneath the carb adjustment sleeve. Sorry, I can't really show you that. But you'll see here in a second. So it's going to come up and through like that and connect in to the kill switch. All right, get back down here. Now that I have the wires through there, time to fit that grommet back in place, which was a lot easier before the wires got put in. And when we're tweaking it here, we don't want to damage those wires, obviously. They're kind of crucial, as seemingly insignificant as they are. All right, what I'm going to do here is back out this carb adjustment sleeve for a second so I have the ability to get back here and take a look at my grommet and make sure that it's seated well. And I think I'm going to take off the air filter so I can get a better look inside the carb box. I'll need to take that off anyway when we're doing the igniter. And just be careful I don't get anything in the carb. I still have the choke on, so that helps. All right. Yeah, the grommet is in place correctly. All right. Back at it here. Just gonna set that on the kill switch. Now I can pop this sleeve back on. Press it home. There we go. Now this red lead, you need pretty much all the slack that it'll give you. Let me see if I can zoom you in. Gee, why don't I just take you off the tripod? So if you look, right there is a little clip the wire is going to feed into. It's going to go up and over the top here, and then I'm going to pop it underneath this tab, which is kind of a stop for the carburetor as well, so it serves two purposes. And then you will see that there is another tab. Let's see if I can get better light on the subject here. I don't know how to activate the flash on the fly here, but if you can see, there is another clip right down there that red lead is going to feed into, and then it'll move over this way onto the igniter. So let's see if we can get her in place. It doesn't want to go real easy. Just be careful you don't end up severing the wire or anything like that in the process. Oh, I don't know. Let's see if I can. There. You can see how it fits up and around. Now I've got to bring it back down into a third clip. It's going to come up in from underneath to interface with the igniter. Let's just test it here. Test the fitment. All right, we got the right length. So I don't know if you can see this. Comes in from the top, but you don't want this getting interfered with your top cover. And so it actually is designed to clip in two places. One up top here, and then down below, so that it's kept back from the top cover. So I've got a little bit of job to do, and it's hard to demonstrate this, to put the spark plug cap on. I'm going to do that off camera, and then once I get that finished, we will complete the ignition setup. All right, I got the spark plug cap, attached the igniter wire, I just went ahead and put it on the spark plug. So now it's time to mount the igniter here and the positive lead. All right. Need a 3mm Allen wrench for these smaller bolts. Husqvarna already put Loctite on those, which nice of them. The general rule of thumb, I've never had any issue with these igniter bolts coming loose. Well, there is a little washer on each of these. I really don't know if it's necessary to have that, but maybe it helps with contact, I don't know. This one's going in pretty darn tight. As is that one, probably due to the Loctite on it. Just gonna grab a little bit of help here. Those are supposed to be about 3 Newton meters. All right, the igniter is in place. Now we just have to get it on the lead right there. Might even be able to do that by hand. If I can get it lined up. There we go. And so there's still another connector down there. I just don't feel like it's a good idea to run the wire down there up and over and kink it. So this is going to be potentially catching the shroud though. So I think that's exactly why that other connector is down there. I'm going to see if we can't press it in there. That way we avoid any issues with it getting caught on the shroud, affecting the shroud, or the shroud potentially it's possible the shroud could rub against it and make it bare. But I can also press it, there we go, up against the other hose. Let's see how that works. If I pull it out like that, that'll work as well. As long as it doesn't get up on top here where the shroud is, we're going to be fine. All right. So we have the ignition hooked up. The flywheel. And the clutch installed. So I think the next task is going to be to hook up the tank and then the starter assembly and clutch cover. And then we'll be near the finish line. All right. Hope you enjoyed. Bowman out.